Hi, I'm Kath Snell. I'm the CEO of Shelter WA. Really excited to talk to Tam today about my journey, my life from Wales through Perth, and a little bit about my career.
Welcome back to 50/50. I feel quite honoured to have you here today, Kath. I always think prior to an interview, how do I feel about this one coming up? And I thought, I feel quite honoured to have Kath here today.
That's a lovely thing to say.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
true. And you brought me flowers. No one's ever brought me flowers.
I don't like turning up anywhere empty-handed, so it was an absolute pleasure. And I bought those flowers for myself last week, and they're just beautiful and they fill in the house, so I thought I'd share.
So you don't know, but they're one of my favourite flowers.
Okay.
And I really love the scent of them, and I love how they open and open and open.
Yeah.
They're the gift that keeps on
Beautiful.
giving. What were
Good.
they? Lilies. So we're
Yes.
not teasers for the
Yes.
audience. They're lilies. And you got them from our favourite lady, Rose, at the deli near you, who I know because it's where I buy all my flowers.
So bizarre, and it's such a lovely experience going in there because every time I walk in, she tells me how gorgeous I am.
I know, well,
So
you
happy days.
are. That's how we met. So we went out for dinner with our mutual friend Alvin and Mark for Alvin's 50th.
Yeah.
Alvin, of course, has been on here and we had such a good time. We did 2 episodes. It was meant to be one. And I walked in and went, oh, my God, who's this beauty? And then we were talking about Mark's sister. Oh, my God, who's this beauty? We were surrounded by your faces.
Well, you're one of them, so that was lovely. It was such a good night.
Wasn't it? It was very nice.
Yeah, it was one of those evenings, I think, where, you're just sort of on a high all night. I don't know if you felt like that.
Yeah.
But, the most amazing food, because, of course, Alvin had chosen the menu.
Yes.
And the perfectly paired wines.
That's right.
And just this table of lovely people, and we'd never met, and it was just gorgeous.
That's actually what was quite special about it. We'd never met, and most of the table knew one another. And then our Andy and I were kind of the blow-ins, but it didn't feel like that. It was just really nice from the get-go.
Lovely. It was
Do you remember,
lovely.
you know what you just reminded me of? Do you remember our super serious waiter? Remember that waiter?
I love that.
He was like a
Yes,
brain
that's
surgeon.
right.
Remember how serious he was, like where we put our plates or drinks, or he's like, no. And I'd start to tense when he'd come near and go, have I done the right thing with my glass or plate? He was so committed. I really appreciated that about him.
I think, did he take some photos for us? Was
Maybe.
he that guy? Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was a really lovely night. I loved
how
it.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
How gorgeous. And speaking of Alvin, you are going to be the celebrant for he and Mark's coming up wedding.
It's so exciting. It's such a lovely thing to be able to do for people that you care about. So I've been a celebrant for exactly 5 years today. So I did my first wedding on the 1st of March in 2020, and friends of mine were visiting from Wales, 2 beautiful men that I call very dear friends of mine, and they decided to get married in Perth. They'd never been here before.
Oh.
They didn't know anything about Perth. They didn't have anyone else here. They were just like, Kath, I know you'll be able to sort it out for us.
Oh.
And I had just finished my qualifying as a celebrant. So I said, yeah, come on over, I'll sort it out.
Oh, come on.
So we did all of that, and we had the wedding at Matilda Bay.
Oh.
The week before, I'd thrown a party for them, so they'd got to meet some of my friends. So 15 of my friends were there at the wedding, 2 of whom were the witnesses. And we just had the best time. They just wanted something fun and low-key.
Oh.
And that's what we did. So that was my first gig as a celebrant. I don't do a lot of it because I have a busy life, as you know.
Say, yes.
So I tend to do weddings for friends, or maybe I've done a couple of weddings for friends' kids, because we're at that age where we've got friends who've got kids that are getting married.
It's true.
And I've done some funerals as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, how beautiful. I can really imagine the beauty of being involved actually in the joy and sorrow of life, right? Because of the beauty of both of those things in very different ways, beginnings and endings, right? And you were saying when you arrived today, 1st of March, as all the Welsh people will know, is St David's Day.
It is
and it's your
indeed.
national day.
Yes.
And we're having it right now.
I know, it's so lovely.
And what did you do as a child? You said you guys used to dress up, or?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with the Welsh national costume, but you must look it up because it's a little bit hilarious, I have to say.
Okay.
So when we were kids, all of the girls used to dress in national costume, and all the boys got to dress in whatever they wanted. So the boys would be like Spider-Man, and the girls would be in these like bonnets and big thick big, thick sort of skirts with. Oh yeah, you've just got to look it up. It is.
I
quite
will
hilarious.
look it up, and it's making me sort of have an anger around the sexism of that day.
I know.
Come on.
Yeah. Or the other alternative for the boys was they would dress as if they were like little miners. So they'd come in sort of, trousers rolled up and a white shirt and a miner's lamp and a flat cap.
Got it.
So, yeah, it's quite funny, but I've still got black and white photos from being in school where all of the girls are in national costume and the boys are in anything and everything. Hilarious.
It's not really connected, but it reminds me of doing ballroom dancing at high school, and for the girls it was voluntary, and for the boys it was, what's the opposite of voluntary? Mandatory. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah. Danielle's here, of course. I don't do anything without my Danielle. I did one interview with Bernadette in Brisbane, and Danielle couldn't be here because she couldn't hear Bernadette's side of the story, and we decided that can never happen again.
No, you've got to be surrounded by good people, right? This is part of my learning life. Particularly as a CEO, surround yourself with good people.
Honestly, particularly as a CEO.
Yeah.
Well, as we came into this interview, I thought, geez, if there's one thing I don't know about, it's what Kath does. And so I'm very excited to talk to you, and it's an area that I worry about as a lay person who knows nothing. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
Let's go back to Wales.
Yes.
So the reason I want to go back to Wales is largely selfish because it's my favourite accent in the whole world.
Really?
And I lived in Scotland for a while, and when I was there, I worked in pharmaceuticals, and we went on our national conference, and as pharmaceuticals do, we went to Florida with UK version of my business.
Yeah.
And of course it was the UK version of my business, so the Welsh team was there. And I followed the Welsh team around like a little puppy with them going, what are you doing? And I'm like, I love your accent. Can I hang out with you? And they're like, all right then. And I had no mates because I was from Australia and been in the UK a little while. And I followed them around Florida just listening to their dulcet tones.
That's so funny.
Do people at home say that you've got an Australian accent now?
No, not really. And I think what happens is once I get back to Wales, and I go back at least once a year, sometimes twice. Nice. I was lucky enough to go back twice last year. The minute I set foot back on Welsh soil, my accent gets even thicker. So by the time I've actually spent any time with anyone, they're like, it sounds like you've never left.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? Even as you said that thing about going back to Wales, your accent got thicker.
There we go.
It's so hilarious. Natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
So natural.
And I've been in Perth. It's actually 20 years this year.
Come on.
It'll be my 20th anniversary in October. And some people sort of say, I've got friends that moved to Australia from the UK and, for 8 years and they sound fully Aussie. And I'm like, I don't even know how that happens.
No.
I don't know. Maybe people are more of a chameleon than I am. I don't know.
I think it's probably partly that, but also the strong Scottish accent, the strong Welsh accent. They're stronger accents to start with.
Yeah.
They've got less in common with the Australian accent because, of course, the Australian accent would have come out of colonial English, a lot of it. Mm. So, I think when you've got that particular lilt, it doesn't leave as early. It's like southern England. My husband's born just outside London. Most people think he's Australian. He's been here almost 30 years. Yeah. But people from northern England, they don't lose their accent either.
I completely agree with that.
Right?
Yeah. There's some London accents and Australian accents that are a little bit similar. I completely understand that. But I don't think I've lost the accent. But what my parents, my sister will sometimes say is, I'll go up at the end of sentences, which is a real Aussie thing.
Where we ask the question every time. Everything we say is a question.
And when I moved over here first, I thought, what is going on? Why are people asking questions about things that are statements?
Yeah.
But I think I do a little bit of that now.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is your accent just becomes a little bit more neutral or a bit more anglified. Because if I spoke as quickly as I probably do at home, with some of the parochial terms, nobody'd understand a word I was saying.
Yes, I
so,
get that.
I get that.
It's like when you see an American on Graham Norton and there'll be a Scottish celebrity and an American, and the American will turn to Graham and say, I can't understand a word they're saying. Yeah. Particularly because Americans tend to be colloquially insular. Yeah. But they'll say, I can't understand a word that they're saying, right? Yeah. So I remember after living in Glasgow for a year, I got into a taxi and I said to the driver, oh my God, I can understand you. And he was like, good on you. You know,
Yeah,
they're very dur kind of people. Yeah, good on you, love. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I haven't been able to understand a taxi driver. I've been here long enough now.
Yeah.
I actually understand what you're saying.
I hear you. I lived in Glasgow for a year in the mid-90s after I finished uni. And there was some terms that I just thought, I can't work that out.
No.
And I don't know if you remember this one, but they will say, I'm going to get the messages for going grocery shopping.
No.
And I was like, I can't even tie that together,
What?
going to get the messages.
Come on.
So that's a Glaswegian thing.
Yes.
And there was one guy I worked in a health club. And Danny, his name was, I can remember him well. And when I was leaving, he said something to me. And I said, Danny, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've not understood a word you said for the whole 12 months.
But I really enjoyed you.
Because, of course, there's different accents even within the city.
True.
You know, so
true because you know it's a old enough culture and often, you know, not particularly mixed culture, that you'll have these sort of different socioeconomic levels with a matching difference in there. Yeah. I had a boyfriend when I was in Scotland and he was from a reasonably wealthy family, and he was much easier to understand than my taxi driver. Sure. Because he was from a different part, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So you grew up in Wales, and then it sounds like you've lived other places as well. When I was, of course, I do my research before I have a podcast guest, and I was looking at your career prior to coming to Perth, and it was very different from your not-for-profit life now.
Yeah, I know.
So you went to uni. Did you go to uni in Wales?
No, I went to uni in Sheffield, in Yorkshire.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was 3 years there from 91 to 94, and I made some great friends there who I'm still really good friends with. We're in contact a lot, and I see them when I go back to the UK. Oh, nice. And I studied recreation and tourism management.
Okay.
So a bit random.
Yes.
And I did that for a few years, and then after that I lived in Bristol for 6 months, and then Glasgow for a year.
Okay.
And then I went on the first time over to Australia, which would have been back in 96, I think.
Just for a visit?
Yeah, I was away for 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so spent about a month in Australia then, and about 9 months in New Zealand, which I loved.
Yes.
And then some time travelling back through Fiji in the States.
Okay.
So I was away for a year, and then back in Cardiff for a couple of years. And then I ended up coming back to Australia for about a year and a half. And then I was living back in Cardiff, and between sort of Cardiff and my hometown, which is about 20 miles from Cardiff, a town called Aberdeen. And then I visited Australia back in 2004. Hadn't been over here for about 5 years. Basically, I based that trip on a birthday where I was out cycling with my friend, and she said, "What are you going to do for your birthday this year, Kath?" I said, I think I want to go to the Spirit House for dinner. And she said, is that in Cardiff? And I said, no, it's on the Sunshine Coast. So she said, what? I said, I haven't been to Australia for 5 years, and I love this restaurant. And I said, I think I'm just going to start saving and go for this trip. So anyway, by the end of the cycle, we had planned our trip to Australia, and we started saving, and we came over, and then a year later I moved over.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And did you move to Perth, or did you move to the East Coast? Because Perth's a very unusual move. Most people go to the East Coast.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had a friend in Perth who later became my boyfriend, husband, ex-husband.
Hey.
And that's the reason.
That was the reason. Yeah. I shouldn't be mean to my home city, but normally there is a reason that people choose Perth over the East Coast. We're far less famous than the East Coast. Yeah. Of course, we also know that we've got some very nice things that we're quite happy not everyone has joined us for.
Absolutely.
You know, when you go down to our exquisite beaches and there's you and you, it's like, let's not tell anyone.
Yes, I know. We're so lucky. It's a beautiful place.
It is. And it gets more interesting.
Yeah. I've been here for 20 years, and I think... when I moved here first, I did struggle a little bit because I was just trying to work it out, you know, and I'd come from, you know, I've obviously just said some of the cities I'd worked in, and I'd actually spent some time in the States. I'd forgotten that bit. I spent 3 or 4 months living in Montana during that time as well, when I was living in Cardiff. And then just coming to Perth, I couldn't kind of work out where the heart of things was. Because particularly having lived in Cardiff and Glasgow and Sheffield, where everything kind of went on in the middle of town,
Yes.
you tended to sort of socialise there, shop there, work there. And Perth wasn't really like that.
No.
So it did take me a little while, but it's just kept growing on me. But it's also kept growing itself, hasn't it?
That's right.
And as you say, it's just got more and more interesting. And I think when you start to scratch beneath the surface, you really realise how much it's got to offer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good explanation, and it's quite nice to hear it. You know, I was born in Perth and have travelled a lot, because when I was born in Perth, you know, early 70s, you know, tumbleweeds down the street, man. It was serious. And it's interesting for someone who, you know, we've only met at Alvin's birthday and today.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, this is our 10th meeting, but of course it's not. But, you know, for quite a vibrant personality, you know, we're lucky to have you, because, you know, Perth wouldn't have been a fantastic match. That's why I was always trying to get the hell out. I was trying to go in the other direction.
Yeah.
But Perth has comforted me. Like when they had the first lane bar, tapas, I was like, I think we're going to be okay. I think I can do it.
I know.
It does help.
It absolutely does.
Yes.
I agree. And I live in Bayswater, and I go out a lot in Maylands and Mount Lawley. And, you know, and sometimes when I'm sitting there having a glass of wine on a Sunday evening in sort of Lyric Lane in Maylands, and the lights are, you know, are on, and there's some live music, and there's, you know, some beautiful artwork, I just kind of go like, yeah.
Right.
Doing all right.
It's all right.
Doing all right.
Are you listening, Alvin? Because when we were talking, I said, there's stuff that goes on now. And he goes, yeah, once a month on a Sunday, there's a market.
The cheek.
Sydney rude. It's a term we should coin. Sydney rude. Sydney superior. We're doing all right. Yeah, it's really nice. So you had this whole different career prior to coming to Perth, but when I was doing my research, it looks like you came into Perth and came into the not-for-profit sector.
Yeah, I did, and it was a conscious decision, actually.
Okay.
So prior to moving to Perth, I was living and working in Wales, and I was working for about 4.5, 5 years for a commercial radio station.
Right, what were you doing for them?
Yeah, so it was part of Capital Radio Group, and I'd done a number of things while I was there, but the last year or two I was the marketing manager.
Okay.
And it was a great role, great friends I still have. Some of them still work there, actually. And really exciting, you know, working in radio, and really good fun. Great career to have when you're in your 20s and 30s. But the biggest enjoyment I got from that role was we had an internal charity. And it was the South Wales version was called Help a South Wales Child. Innovative title.
But clear.
Yes. And we used to support children in need, you know, across all sorts of different areas. And I used to work really closely with the charity manager to market what they were doing.
Yes.
And I just suddenly realised I was getting more pleasure and more reward out of that side of the business than I was promoting the actual radio station. Yes. So I thought to myself, you know, when I knew I was moving to Perth, I thought, I wondered if this is a good time to make a career change. And I knew that as much as I was enjoying working at the radio station in marketing, it wasn't really sort of satisfying something deep down. You know, I wasn't getting the sort of soul food that I needed, and I didn't know what that looked like, actually. And it was speaking to that charity manager, Sarah, and she said, you know, why don't you perhaps volunteer when you get to Perth? And it wasn't something that I was super familiar with.
No.
And I was a bit like, you know, I guess I could. And I wasn't super drawn to the idea.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, I realised that I had volunteered before, but I probably hadn't labelled it as volunteering. So anyway, I moved to Perth, and I didn't have a work visa for about 3 months, so the only thing I could do was volunteer.
Okay.
And I volunteered for an organisation called Volunteer Task Force.
Yes.
And then I got my work visa, and then I applied for a job with them. And long story short, I was with them for 11 years.
Yes, and did you become their CEO?
Yeah.
And are they called Chorus now?
Yeah, so they merged, yes. So it was a really interesting time. So I volunteered, and then I started working as their volunteer and business development manager, and then their sort of senior manager, and then the CEO. Really interesting journey, amazing organisation, great people. And then we decided, along with the board, to merge with 2 other organisations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was quite a big sort of not-for-profit merge at the time, and that was back in 2016, 2017. And so I worked with them through that and took a voluntary redundancy through all of that.
Oh, wow.
Still got friends working there, and then went on to another CEO role at an organisation called United Way, WA, for 5 years.
Yes. And United Way looks at children reading. Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, it's a really interesting charity. They're a global organisation. They're really big in the States and Canada. They're not as big in Australia, and unfortunately during and after COVID lots of United Ways closed. Just because of the nature of the model, really.
Yes.
And the WA branch has ended up closing as well. Really unfortunate. But we worked really closely with children in that early education, so trying to break the cycle of poverty through education. And then there was a number of parts. So it was part of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so they're closely attached to that, and there's a few other programmes, and also working with women who had been through family domestic violence, and some homelessness programmes. And really that's the role that got me interested in homelessness, which of course is what I've moved into since then.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Since 2002.
So 2022. Yeah. So
yes, sorry.
Yeah.
That's what my brain does sometimes.
Yeah, I get it. So yes, 2017 to 22 with United Way, and then since 2022 with Shelter WA.
So when I think about the kind of work you do, and when you arrived today, I said I couldn't be more of a layperson, which was a polite way of saying couldn't be more ignorant. I think about the different charitable work you've done and the different caring work, and I think there must be hope and hopelessness running through everything, right? You must see very difficult things and circumstance, and to do your work you must be able to maintain a sense of hopefulness. Is that how it works for you? Is it in your nature? Have you developed it? Do you ever feel hopeless? How does it work for you?
That's a really good observation, actually. So the work that we do at Shelter WA, we're the peak body for community housing and homelessness services. So we don't provide direct services.
Yes.
Our role is to advocate for the sector to try and influence system change.
Okay.
So a lot of the work that we do is working directly with government to try and advise, really. So really speak on behalf of the sector. Our members are community housing providers or specialist homelessness services and some individuals.
Okay.
And they really tell us through consultation what they want to see.
Okay.
And then we advocate for that to government.
Okay.
So I guess in some ways there's a little bit of it's a little bit more arm's length than us actually delivering the services.
Yes.
But we do get to hear all of the stories, and it's our role to be really clear on what's happening both in the metro and the regions. So it can be really upsetting and distressing. And I think for me, I'm quite a naturally optimistic person.
Yes.
And I do think you need to have some of that to keep going.
Yes.
And I really believe that we have to celebrate the wins.
Yes.
So, it's really about trying to build on what is currently working, and, working really collaboratively and respectfully with the sector, but also with government to try and make sure that we keep moving the dial.
Yes.
Because we're in a pretty awful crisis at the moment.
Well, yes, the thing, when you say about moving the dial, Danielle and I were talking before you arrived, and being part of the Perth community and being probably, we don't really talk about class here much, but if you're going to talk about where we land economically, sort of middle class, comfortable. I grew up, I'm 51. I grew up with a family where my dad was self-employed. We didn't really have any money, but we also didn't really have any hardship, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We had the little 3x1 and all was well, right? Without it being too affluent. And then, of course, being born into the right generation with the right educational ability, the right lack of trauma, the right race, the right everything. of course, I've gone on and done what everyone did, and I bought a, unit, and then I met my husband, and then, and I'm just a part of a very lucky, and I'm very aware of it, a little bit like you're optimistic. I'm good at being grateful, right? I'm very aware. It's like, could I be any luckier, And then, so could I be any luckier just being in the bog standard group? Then when this latest boom happened, coincidentally, Andy and I had sold our house in Hilton in what we thought was a boom. So we got a good price for it.
Yeah.
And we had that money and we still had a level of mortgage, and we thought, right, we'll just take our time and find something. A friend recommended the house we then bought 2 years ago. The only reason we didn't lose $300,000 or $400,000 is because we happened to have a friend recommend something, went and looked at it, liked it. So even though we couldn't be more lucky, more privileged, we would have been not in a difficult position, but certainly not in one we wanted to be in. And we're talking about people that really don't have a worry. So then I go, you've got your young people, your people on an average income. This was not an issue even 10 years ago. Now it's a phenomenal issue. So you would have been helping people, your organisation would have been helping people that we would have considered in hardship.
Yeah.
But now how many people would be in hardship? The numbers must be.
Yeah, it is. So if we look at the statistics, there's around 10,000 people in WA that are considered homeless.
Okay.
And about 2,000 of those people are what we call street present, so people that you're seeing living on the street.
Yes.
And we have a wait list for social housing of over 20,000.
Wow.
So that could be individuals, families, couples. So there's a lot of people waiting on social housing.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. I think even, certainly in my time in Perth, homelessness hasn't been necessarily that visible for people.
No.
And I can remember when I was working in the homelessness space, first of all, I used to go to my dentist, who is wonderful dentist, lives in the Golden Triangle.
Yes.
Got a place in the city, and I'd say, I'm working in homelessness, and he'd say, is that a problem then in Perth? I think I might have seen one guy, and I'm like, it is a problem, but a lot of it was hidden for a long time. So there was a lot of people couch surfing, there was a lot of overcrowding. But I think you will have probably noticed yourselves in the last year or two, it's become a lot more visible.
Yes.
Because there's so many more people that are really struggling.
Yes.
So what we're hearing from our members, who are the homelessness service providers, so they might be St. Pat's or St. Bart's or Enlightening WA, or the people that you're probably familiar with, is that they're seeing so many more people. But a lot of the people that they're now seeing are people that are working. They're people that are studying.
Yes.
There are families that are living in cars.
Yes.
There's lots of families living in cars and tents all down the coastline of WA. If you go to any sort of park in the evening, certainly, down in Bayswater, if I go for an evening walk, there's at least one guy that lives in a van down there. So people are seeing it a whole lot more.
Yes.
So the cost of living, it's been a real perfect storm, if you like. The cost of living's gone up, and we all know how expensive it is to pay your bills and to pay your food bill and to pay everything else.
Yes.
But rental prices have gone through the roof as well.
Yes.
And in WA, there's no cap on rents.
No.
So while rents can only go up once a year, they can actually go up by any amount the landlord decides.
That's right.
Which makes it really unsafe for people, because you can't budget for something that you don't know what it's going to look like. No. And that's left a lot of people in a really difficult position. So affordable housing, and by affordable housing we refer to affordable rentals, are really difficult to find across WA, and not just in the metro. I mean, some of the regions are even worse. The vacancy rates are tiny.
Yes.
And then we've got social housing that is in deficit as well. So there's not enough social housing. So we have seen, with this government, that it's invested heavily over the past few years, but it's playing catch up. Yes. So we've had decades of underinvestment.
Yes.
And, it's not like we're sort of saying, can you bake some extra cakes this week? We're talking about housing. It takes a long time to go up.
Yes.
We've got a construction industry that is that is really tight.
Yes.
Because, of course, when things are not going so well in WA, you get all of the amazing tradies that go and work on the mines, or they go and work over east or whatever. And then trying to get them back is really hard. Plus, even if you sort of say, well, we need to get more people into the state to build the houses, well, they need houses themselves.
That's right, they do.
Yeah, so it's difficult.
And you know what? So when I think about what you're trying to achieve, or what people would... So, when I think of your bog standard Western Australian who's got a home and is secure and is going to Coles and going, what the? But they can pay the bill as they exit Coles. I think people would consider themselves good-hearted, right? But if they're in a market where they have a home plus a rental property, if they're in a market where they're voting for what will be good for them, I wonder how people think about this issue, or even if they are thinking about this issue.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one example, and it's hard for me to tell you without it sounding like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but it's a way to introduce right? It's a very small trumpet blow, right? Okay. So when we bought this house that I told you we were very lucky to buy because we got it before this latest boom, we've rented in Glen Forest for 8 years. So we went to South America for a year with Sam, who's 20 months, who you met today.
Gorgeous.
My little baby. We should have been arrested at the airport, but they let us go. I wrote a book called You're Taking My Grandchild Where? Because the poor grandmothers are like, what are you doing? You weird people that just give us nothing but worries. Anyway, off we went. We brought him back alive, hurrah. Yeah. And I said, I want to go and live in the hills, because we'd been living in Peru in the mountains. Yeah. And I was like, what's the Perth Mountains?
Yeah.
It's like the 200-metre speed bump that is our hills.
I love it.
My kind husband said, all right, we'll give it a go for 6 months. Yeah. We'd been living in a 1-bedroom studio in Peru, so we came back, saw this 2x1 shack in Glen Forest, and went, look, Shre. And we moved in 8 years ago. Right?
Yeah.
So in the meantime, while we're renting, we had this house that we bought, but we decided not to move in straight away for lots of reasons. We'll rent it out. So this was before things went truly bananas, but it was still good rental. So put a young couple in there, newly together, both working, newly post-uni, young love couple for the first time moving out, right? And we had the rental on for a certain amount, and they wanted to pay a little bit less. And we said, look, they're good in every way, let's do it. So we put them in, and they had a year's rental, and then it came up to be renewed. And on your point about no cap, of course, the real estate wants you to put up as high as possible because they get more commish. Yep. So they said, you can put this up $200 a week. And I said, what are you talking about? And they go, totally, you can put up $200 a week, and if they can't pay it, we'll get someone else. And I said, but they're a young couple that I know what they do for work, and they will not be able to afford an extra $200 a week. They're good tenants. Yes, it'll cost us money, but we're reasonably affluent in terms of life. I'm not going to put it up. And the real estate was like, you're an idiot. And I said, well, at least I can sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And so that's the trumpet blow. But the reason I raised it was, one, because it makes me feel good for just being a basically decent human being.
Good.
But
good stuff. Yep.
But most people I would talk to, including some friends of mine, when I said that, I said, oh, what did you do with your rental? And they said, oh, no, we put up market rate, because business is always excused. Any immorality that's connected to money, you don't even have to rationalise it. It's like, well, that's the market, Kath. Like if you're talking to someone, hang on, do you really need your rent to be $1,200 a week for this 3x1 in some, Yeah, because that's the market. I'm part of the market. And you go, hang on, you're a boomer. You've got all the money in the world. Do you really have to be a part of it?
Yeah.
But as I say that, I can feel myself sort of shouting into the void and people going, what the hell? Like... Yeah. No one's not going to charge rent, you idiot. Of course they're going to charge what they can get. And I think that's not what I said is not a solution. People are not going to do what I said, right? They're going to go, of course I'll put it up.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a really good example that you've used. And I'm really great. I've got some friends in a very similar position, and they do the same as what you do, right? Good. Because there's good people out there. There's lots of really great landlords that are doing the right thing, or who are just putting it up a small amount to help, cover whatever they need to cover. Good. Brilliant. Good. But there's also people that are doubling rents, and suddenly people are going, well, I was paying $400 a week and now I'm paying $800. And it's just impossible for people. So, that's why there needs to be some government intervention in that, so that we're not saying it's got to be a complete freeze, but there needs to be some sort of stabilisation.
So basically because people can't be counted on to do it themselves, there has to be a little bit like you have to wear your seatbelt so people can make a clever decision.
Yeah.
If they're an idiot, then this is the same idea. Like,
yeah,
we have to say what is a morally appropriate thing to do.
Absolutely, and it levels things out. So, you know, at the moment, because we're in this crisis, if we can level things out, because what we're seeing is if we're going to continue to see rents increasing and increasing, people are just falling off the cliff, right? So we're trying to pick people up. The homelessness service providers are at the bottom of the cliff going, more people, more people, more people.
Yeah.
So there's more money needing to be invested in there.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can keep people safely housed, they don't need services, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like, well, where do you want to invest money?
That's right.
You know, because at some stage of people's lives, you're going to need to support them.
Yes.
If you're not supporting them to stay living safely in an affordable home.
Yes.
And it's the most important thing for people.
Yes.
I mean, can you imagine trying to bring up your son in a car?
No.
And there's a lot of people doing it.
No, I
can't
imagine
imagine it every day, and it still makes me want to cry. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Even up where we're in the hills where we are, where there's a reasonable amount of money. Certainly, not everyone's wealthy up there, but there's a reasonable amount of money. Lots of people who've lived up there a long time. There is a suspicious number of caravans plugged into the front of houses, and I've noticed them going up and up and up. And I've thought the family's in there, right? The extra family members are in there. Someone else is in the caravan, and they're not homeless. So I reckon you're right. Those numbers would be massively higher.
Yeah.
Because you've got so you've got your people who are living on the street, and we see more of those people in Perth. I get why the dentist said, oh, is there a problem there? Because compared with other cities in the world, there are definitely people living on the street, but the numbers are not high. They're much higher than they were. Yeah. We've got a lot of people at the lights now. That's very new.
Yeah.
And, of course, a lot of people, I'm not sure why, but I was taught it and believed it for a while, and then I thought, I don't understand that. So a lot of people said to me, if you see someone on the street, don't give them any money. And I can't remember the rationalisation, but a bit like we were talking about with my voting choices over life, I've gone, hang on, what do I think? So now if I see someone, I'll give them some money, and if someone's with me in the car or whatever and goes, don't do that, you're just encouraging it. And I'm like, listen, if that person is a multimillionaire but is willing to debase themselves at the red light to get $2, I don't care if they're a multimillionaire, they've earned my $2, right?
Yeah.
But that's nothing. I reckon there should be, I don't know if you can help with this, but these days I never have cash, and everyone who's homeless needs a pay pass. But then I thought everyone would get shitty because they'd say, you can't give homeless people a pay pass because everyone's judgy and all the rest. But I was like, they actually need a thing where you can boop and give them some money.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm distracting myself, but you've got your hardcore homeless that we would think of when we think of homeless. And then obviously there's tens of thousands of people now that are homeless, even if the car is supposedly the home.
Yeah.
How do they shower? How do they eat? How do they sleep?
Yeah, and that's where the specialist homelessness services come in for all of those kind of things. And there's lots of places that provide those services, but it's not enough. Okay. You know, it's not enough anymore because of the volume of people that we're seeing coming through. So there's some really good things that have been put in place. There's a government rent relief scheme, which we're part of, and that's been fantastic. So that supports people who are in rent arrears.
Okay.
So there's a criteria that people need to fit, but they might be in rent arrears. They haven't got enough money in their bank account, and they need some support.
All right.
And Vinnie's and Anglicare run this fantastic programme. I sit on the steering committee for it. So there's some really good things that have come about. Okay. But again, it's, we'd really love to see the rent relief programme extended because there's more and more people that are struggling with those rents. But it's like, if we don't do some fundamental system change, like capping rents, or making sure that there's a rental affordability scheme in WA. There has been a national rental affordability scheme. It ends in WA next year. So there's going to be even more people that can't afford their rents. So there's some things that we've put up in our election platform that's on our website that have said, here's some real solid suggestions that can help stem the flow of people who are doing it really tough.
I'm not sure if you can answer this question in your position, but when I think about what governments or potential governments would put up as suggestions, if I think of capping rents, you would upset wealthy people, and wealthy people are important, I hear, and they have opinions on things, and those opinions are loudly listened to. So is there a risk for government? Will they shy away from the most useful decision because the people with the most power and money won't like that decision?
I think at the end of the day, you know, we've all got a vote, you know,
Yes.
and 30% of people in WA are renters.
Okay.
So, you know, people have got a strong voice. And I think, you know, it depends what, you know, what you want to achieve in government. Are we only looking after people who have got plenty of money?
Yeah.
Or are we trying to look after every cohort of people that are living in WA? You know, we're a massively rich state, not just by Australian standards, but by global standards.
Yes.
And we should not be seeing families living in cars.
That's, I think, the question Danielle and I were talking about before you arrived. And Danielle said, can you please ask Kath, how could we get into this situation as such a rich place? Is it the lag? Is it the lag plus a lack of action? Is it the lag plus people with money not being interested in helping those without it? And there's two questions. One is, how did we get here? And two, what's in Shelter's opinion the quickest way to resolve? So I've heard you talk about the cap on rentals.
Yeah.
Is it literal building? Is it like...
Yeah. So I think we've got here, there's been a number of reasons, but one of the big ones is underinvestment in social housing. And I think, you know, the Australian way of thinking, which I understand has always been, you have to buy somewhere.
Yes.
So, you know, in lots of other cities globally, it's more about, you know, well, as long as you've got somewhere to live that's safe, that's suitable for you. It might be a rental, it might be an apartment.
Yes.
But the Australian dream has always been, it's got to be a 3-bedroom house with a garden.
That's right.
You know, so that might have been suitable for a certain period of time, but as our population has grown, then, you know, there's more competition for that. We do live in this peaks and troughs sort of state.
Yes.
So we have workforce issues with builds.
Yes.
So, you know, we don't always have the volume of building that we need or volume of construction that we need to respond to the population.
Yes.
So, you know, you sort of add these things up and then not enough social housing. And I think that we've got a really low income cap for social housing. So you have to be on a very low income in WA to be eligible for social housing.
Okay.
So you pretty much have to be on a Centrelink payment, right? If you're on any more than that, you're not really eligible for social housing. I'm talking quite generally.
Yes.
But that does mean then that there's a whole lot of people that are looking for affordable housing.
That's right.
And there's not a lot of affordable housing because we live in this state where, you know, there's you can put your rent up to whatever it looks like. So we've got the NRAS, which is the National Rental Affordable Scheme, which is ending next year. So that means that there was subsidies paid to developers to be able to provide rentals for people at an affordable rate, and that was for a decade, and that's coming to an end. So we've really pushed for a state-based rental affordability scheme where developers are provided with this subsidy to be able to say, right, well, we've got the subsidy from government, and then we can rent accommodation to people at an affordable price.
Yes.
So I think there's been a few things that have happened over decades to get us to this position. And I do think that, you know, this government is trying really hard. We've got a housing and homelessness minister that is very hard working, and they have invested a lot of money into social housing.
Okay.
But you can't just click your fingers and, you know, there it is. So there's a number of things really that we're recommending, and some is that we need to get some more of that crisis accommodation up. Because we have got to get those people who are rough sleeping with complex needs into accommodation. Like, that's the first thing that we need to do.
Yes.
So there's been some really great initiatives, like the Murray Street Hotel has been converted. We'd love to see more of that. So we'd like to see more conversions of buildings. We'd also like to see more youth homelessness accommodation. So there's a fantastic model called Youth Foyer. We've got one in Leederville, the Oxford Foyer, which supports young people. I think it's up to 25 years old. They have to be either studying or working to be able to live there, but there's some services, there's support there. And it's a evidence-based model, which means that once someone has been through a youth foyer for a couple of years, their chances of falling into homelessness again are absolutely minimised.
Oh, wow.
So, you invest early,
yes,
and then that gets someone on that trajectory into a life of, working and being able to support themselves.
Yes.
So we'd love to see more youth foyers.
Yes.
We'd like to see more Aboriginal short stay accommodation, particularly in the regions.
Yes.
There's a real shortage there. Some of the regional and remote areas see slightly different issues of homelessness than we do in the metro area. So overcrowding is a really big one in the Kimberley and the Pilbara.
Yes.
We need to see better conditions in social housing, because some of the social housing that we're seeing doesn't have good insulation, doesn't have good air conditioning, that kind of thing. So we need to see the quality of housing improved as well. And one of the other things that we're really pushing for is livable standards. So WA and New South Wales are the only two states that are not signed up to the national livable standards. And what that means is accessibility into houses. So there's 6 standards, and they're things like hallways are wide enough for a wheelchair or a pram, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And there's an accessible entryway into the house, and there's the walls are thick enough in the bathroom to be able to put a handrail, that kind of thing. So they're really basic things. And in all of the other states, as I say, apart from WA and New South Wales, they've signed up for all buildings to align with those. So we're really pushing for WA to do that. I feel like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And most builders are doing most of those things now. And even government, when they build their own public housing, are building to those standards. But again, like we said earlier, there's no regulations that ensures that builders are building to those standards.
Yeah, so you've got the social housing model, and I can imagine with that low level of income that you're allowed to have, in this particular day where literally, and I don't know how people survive on that level of money in any way to eat or anything, then you've got that affordable gap. That must be just enormous. If I look at that for myself and look at what rentals are available at, not even cheap amounts, but, you know, if you're thinking of a rental, even people say, oh, if I could get one for 400 or 500, that'd be wonderful. Even 5 years ago, that was an expensive house.
Absolutely,
but now it's like, good one, 400, or 500. The other thing that makes me want to cry as you're talking is, you live your life and you just tick along thinking about yourself and having a good time, if you're lucky enough to be in the position like I am. And then you were talking just then and I just felt like bawling. I was like, how could we be the kind of people that have people who can't have a home? How can the world be the kind of world where we have people starving? It's so shocking, and it's so easy to blind yourself to it because you're in your little life. You're in your good little life with terrible worries, like really very important worries. And then you go, oh, hang on, what are we doing? And then what can people do? People that aren't in a position like I was that could make that simple decision one time. What could someone with an amount of money available for charity, or is there a way people can, apart from making their own choices around their own rentals if they have them, but what can people do? Can they donate? Can they volunteer? Is there anything that Joe Blow can do?
Yeah, look, I think a really important thing is for people to make themselves aware of what's going on, particularly in their own local government areas. So, sometimes there's different programmes that are available. Talk to your local members, find out what's going on, find out where the issues are. And if you are in a position to give, then look at what the charities are that work in this space, because there's always, every charity needs help and needs support.
Yes.
And if you are in a position to give, then, look at the charities that really talk to you as an individual. There's always volunteering opportunities available as well. I would always say go through Volunteering WA. They're the peak body for volunteering. They know what all of the opportunities are. But as and to go back to what you said and what you're doing, if you are a landlord, then just try and be fair about what you're doing and how you support the people that have hopefully been good tenants for you. And consider what all of the options are when you are going to vote. We're all going to vote next weekend.
It's true.
For the state, have some consideration of what all of the policies are for each of the parties. I think that's really important that people are well informed, both from a state level and a federal level. We've got, in WA, we've got state election, we've got feds, and we've got local government elections this year. So, this is the time for people to decide what's important to them.
And decide what's important to them. So, like I was talking about, living our little lives and being self-focused and all those things that human beings naturally are, that it is what it is to be human. But, I was joking with you before we started saying I voted a particular way when I was younger because my parents had, and then the ABC or someone similar a few years ago had a survey you did to see how you wanted to vote, and it turns out I was exactly the opposite end of voter than I thought I was, which has been wonderful because it allows me to live more in line with my true values. But in this conversation, it is making me think about the way we rationalise things, the way we dehumanise if we don't literally know the person, like that whole your headache is worse than someone else's cancer. Like if we don't know the homeless person, we dehumanise. Life is too much for us. Pain is too much for us. So people just won't think about this topic. They'll think about it. They'll pass someone in the street and they'll either help them or judge them, but they won't be awake at night going, people aren't able to find an affordable house. How can I either be less greedy or how can I assist or...
I think, though, that you're right. You might not know the person on the street, but there's every chance that you're working with someone or that you're going into a supermarket and you're engaging with someone who's doing it really tough. Because most people are doing it really tough at the moment. There's a lot of people that are working in the not-for-profit sector that are struggling themselves. So, I know that some of our members have staff that are homeless.
Right.
So if you're not earning a good wage at the moment, and particularly if you're living on your own, if you're on a pension, you're paying an enormous amount of money to your rent most of the time. So there's some really interesting stats. I was looking at a report this week around the rent relief scheme for some of the people that had applied for rent relief. And I think if you were on people that were on a sort of single people who were on a pension were paying something like 74% of their pension on rent.
Oh my God.
Like, what does that leave you?
And it's not just housing that's gone mental, prices have gone mental. Like really, that whole thing I said about Coles, it's been an extraordinary increase over a very short period of time. So, and then there'd be no spending available on anything other than basics. So you couldn't go, I'm going to go to a movie to relax, or I'm going to go and get my nails done, or because you just have to try and figure out how to live and eat. And we have a level of healthcare in this country which means that we're better than other places, but still, if you've got certain things, you're waiting a long time. I've got another theory that I don't think any government will bring in, but there is no reason why most Australians who have money need to get Medicare rebates, right? So I've never talked to anyone about this. Most people go, probably, shut up, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. If I go to the doctor with how much we need help for people that need help, I pay my $80 or $90 or whatever, and I get 47 or something back from Medicare. I always do it. They go, that'll come back from you. I go, great, bonus. I'm only going to pay $32. I can pay the $80, right? And that 47 could go to your cause or many others, right? But when I talk about the bravery of governments, and also I'm sure most people that I speak to say, what are you talking about? I don't want to miss out on my Medicare. But actually, do you really, for those of us with money, do we really need that amount? And when you add up the enormous amount that people that aren't needing it get, I think that's sort of the whole thing, right? This lack of equity, lack of care, lack of... Is there any countries that are doing it well? Is Northern Europe doing it well? I always like to think of Northern Europe.
I know. I think a lot of the Scandinavian countries, particularly around housing, have got some really clever initiatives. And Canada's, I think, doing better as well. There's some interesting models. You know, there's a what we call a housing first model, which is ensuring that people have a house first and then have services wrapped around, which is slightly different to what it used to look like. And Australia's adopted that as well, thankfully. But I understand what you're saying about those sort of blanket approaches.
Yes.
So, you know, one of the things that the government has done for a number of years as a cost of living relief has been the blanket electricity credits, you know. And, you know, while that's great for a lot of people, and you know, certainly I think that's wonderful for people who are doing it tough.
Yes.
I didn't need it, and you probably didn't need it. So personally, I would have rathered, you know, there being a way of creating a credit for people who are doing it tough. I'd rather people that are doing it tough have more, and I don't get any. Yeah. You know, and I know that we've got an opportunity to give that and pass it on. Yes. But that's just an extra step for people that don't often do it. Yes. So I think that and you know, for us at Shelter, we don't. I won't say for Medicare because that's a different thing, but certainly for blanket credits. Yes. We would support something that's more targeted. Yes. For people that are struggling. Yeah, more.
There was some school payments as well for kids at school, and that was the same thing. It was like, and you kind of as you know, the bog standard person, you go, oh, okay. And because it's not really your choice, you don't go, oh no, thank you, please give that to Mary down the street. Doesn't even seem a possible thing to do. So you just kind of see it as a bonus. Yeah. But if they did say they were doing targeted things, this is, as in this conversation, I keep coming back to, I understand that I believe a lot of politicians would go into politics to make a difference and be passionate and work very hard. I think people misunderstand the commitment and hardworking nature of politicians and that they're actually not paid particularly well for what they do, right? Yeah. But you know, this whole, how do I please the public enough to get back in? And then, of course, because this is not your area at all, of course, but because the tenures are so short, they can't do long-term decisions because they have to get back in the next time. And if they dare be honest, like Hewson, when he was honest about GST, was like, shh, 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 you know, and didn't won the unlosable election. So, I think certain decisions need to be made where good thinking, reasonable people would go, I understand why I didn't get that and someone else did because I didn't need it and someone else did. But if they do it blanket, that money is going to get spent. Or if I can do my Medicare card, I'm going to do it because I don't want to feel like an idiot by not doing it. Yeah. Everyone's doing it, Kath. Everyone.
Exactly.
You know, or when I was talking about the rental, I said to one of my friends, what are you doing? They go, oh, put up. I go, well, yeah, but, you know, it's a bit expensive. They go, oh, well, you know.
Not my problem.
It's not my problem. It's like, you know, the baby boomer generation. You know, I was talking to a member of that recently. They were having a great old time. They were talking about how they'd lived through the best years post-World War II, but before the Trumpianisms and all the things that are coming in now. You know, they're about to die. They've got tons of money. They've had a great number of decades. And I was like, that's great for you.
Yeah. And it's really hard for young people now, really hard. Like, can you imagine trying to save a deposit for a house? Can you imagine trying to move out of your parents' house into a rental at the moment?
So between 5 years ago and now, I went from thinking Sam would be able to do all those things that we did. Yeah. And Andy and I literally in the last 5 years have said, if this child's going to own something, we're going to have to support that. We're in the first generation now of the children of our generation and maybe a little bit younger. Those children will be the only ones that own houses, and quite quickly it's going to be like Europe where you rent and a few rich people own everything, right? But everyone else rents. But like you were saying, that value thing also needs to change because we've always here grew up with, you know, the quarter acre, the house. And, you know, I've had to say to myself in circumstances where I've wanted to own something, it's like, you don't actually need to own that, you know. And it's like, no, I want to own it, because it's good to own it. Yeah. And changing your thinking around that as well, you know.
And I think there's there's some stigma around social housing as well, which we don't necessarily see as much in other countries. So, and I think, you know, some of that comes down to the fact that the income cap is so low. But in the UK, you know, social housing is often a common choice for people for a period of time. So when I was little, my parents lived in social housing, or council housing as we call it in Wales, from when I was born to when I was 6. And then they saved money for a deposit, and then they bought their own house. So that sort of transitioning through social housing is a bit more common in other countries.
Yeah.
The reason that doesn't really happen here is because once you're in social housing, so you've got to be under that cap to get into social housing in WA.
Yes.
You have to stay under that cap.
Yes.
To be able to remain in social housing.
Yes.
So you're never going to be able to save money for a deposit or save money to go into rental, which is up here.
That affordable gap is stopping that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no bit where you can move, because if you get the job that gives you too much money, you have to leave there, but you can't afford there.
That's exactly right. So what we think we're seeing, and we're about to do some research around this, is even if people wanted to get more work, and we're hearing this anecdotally, they're not in a position to, because then they could lose their social home. So here we are in WA with a workforce problem.
Yes.
So we haven't got enough labour force in construction, in childcare, and in a number of other areas. And then we've got 40,000 social houses where people can't earn more than Centrelink payment or be at risk of losing their homes.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yes. It's quite an easy, logical thing to see.
So I'm like, well, maybe we need to look at how realistic that income cap is for people. So in the UK, when I was growing up, there was once my parents were in a council house and they were a young couple with 2 young children, they were able to work as hard as they could to earn enough money to buy, to save a deposit.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to do that in WA rules.
No. And then you'll end up with generational poverty, right, where people don't work.
Poverty trap.
Yeah, and then the next generation grows up with people not working. And then, of course, you have Mr. and Mrs. Middle going dole bludgers and wastes of space. And it's much more comfortable to do that than to go, hang on.
Understand the reality of it.
Yeah, like what's actual life like, and how did that happen?
I know.
Because no one likes that, and the world seems to be going more that way, that binary thinking, good and bad, different tribes. That nuance is so uncomfortable. Like, for me to sit here and talk to you and go, oh, hang on, I could do something different with my money, or I wasn't thinking about that kid who could be Sam living in the car.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to realise your ignorance, to realise how you haven't cared, how comfortable you've been and not give it another thought. And then, of course, when most people are challenged with that, they don't feel bad, they get defensive. So then they'll go, oh, yeah, I was just bloody old bludgers.
Yeah.
They could, I don't know about you, Kath, but I think if they worked a little bit harder, they'd be all right. And you go, hang on, they can't, there's literally no house in this space now.
It's the information and education, around that. And people are working hard and living in cars. Right. People are nurses and teachers and those key workers that we need that cannot find homes. So it's, and I hear what you're saying, and I think that that rhetoric has been common. But if you honestly, if you read any of the stories, any of the evidence, any of the research, like that just isn't the case anymore.
It's changed very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was an article in the West, I think, last weekend, of a woman who is a lecturer, I think she is. We covered some of the story with her, and she's in her 40s, I think, and she's living back with her elderly parents because she cannot find anywhere affordable to live.
Yes.
She's working, and there's so many stories like that.
Yes.
Where people are having to go back and live with their parents, or having to live with friends or whatever. And look, it's great if you've got the ability to do that, but it's also not it's not great for anyone, is it? It's not healthy.
No.
I mean, would you want to go back with your family and live with your parents,
right?
or live with your husband's
Danielle
parents?
just did quite a dramatic head shake in my peripheral vision.
So, nobody wants to be doing that.
So you've got the social consequences. I know a couple of people in my own life where there's a real social consequence to having to look after family that they don't particularly want to have living with them. If they can't put them out on the street, which they literally would be. And then I think the other thing that always surprised me when I first heard it is how close any of us are to homelessness. And I think a lot of people don't realise just how close they could be. And if they don't have a support system in place, which not everyone does, not everyone's moving in with mum or dad, right? Mum and dad are gone and there's no money and no home and any of us, and I know the stories for, particularly for women, and as women get older, there's a terrible problem, right, with women getting older, sometimes marriage break up and the woman doesn't have money, and I've heard of this numerous times recently, even through some of my clients who have told me about how marriage breakups have worked and how the husband has cleverly, dastardly kept the money and the woman is left destitute and elderly and
common. So more, we see more people getting divorces a little bit later in life. So women over 55 really, for a while, I think it's just leveled out recently, but for a while it was the fastest growing cohort of homeless people were women over 55. Right. That's only recently leveled. There's lots of programs on it. There's a really great program on ABC, and I think it's on Netflix called "And Women Undercover." I think it's called.
Okay.
Amazing documentary about women living in camper vans, living in cars, all women over 55, 60, 65, 70, who, and for that exact reason, so lots of women in that age group don't have the super. Most women end their working life with less than 50% super of men.
Yes.
And if you're not then, with your partner, then you just don't have the income. You've often taken time off to have children.
That's right.
All of those things, and literally not being able to find the rental accommodation that you need at that time in your life.
I think there would be women not leaving marriages now. I think they'd have to decide to stay a lot.
Yeah.
Because and some aren't aware, some would not be aware of the position they're going to put themselves in, but some would be aware and are staying with hubby because miserable or not, at least I've got a house and I'm not going to be literally destitute.
Yeah, and, during COVID and since, lots of the women's refuges have been bursting at the seams.
Yes.
And that means that's a real, a blockage in the system. Yes. So they weren't able to take on any more people in the refuges, which meant that there was more violence at home.
Yes.
So we did see a real lift in that during COVID times.
Yes.
And that's taking a while to come through the system because we still haven't got the houses for those women that were in refuges to come through the system.
That's right.
There's a lot being done, and there are some really great initiatives happening, but there are still blockages there.
Yes.
Which does mean that it can deter women from leaving, and that's a really unsafe place to be.
That's right. If they're in that domestic violence situation, it could literally be life and death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's not a light-hearted romp, is it?
No, it's not. It's it's and like I said, and I go back to what I said at the start, we have to celebrate the wins because we all have to keep functioning as well, and we all have to stay positive and determined, and keep that sort of push going forward to try and make sure that we're making some good decisions as a state.
On that, in terms of what can one do, there is these elections coming up. You have information on your website where people can have a look at what different governments are promising for their election promises. And there will still be some sort of survey like I did on ABC around who do you actually want to vote for. Like, what's the most basic thing we can do as a privileged person in this is think, right? Is to think what is happening rather than putting blinkers on and going, well, that's very sad, but nothing to do with me. Going, hang on, what if it was something to do with me? What if I could support people? What if I could give away a little? comparatively a very little amount of money for me that wouldn't change someone else's life, right?
Yeah.
Even we're going to move into the home that we bought, and I gave our tenants notice, and I really felt it giving them notice because I knew the likelihood of them getting, I knew they wouldn't get the similar home because of that whole what it was meant to go up to.
Yeah.
But I thought even to get a reasonable home, they're going to struggle, you know?
Yeah.
And I said to the tenant, I'm so sorry, you know, it's time for us to come in and stuff's happening with our home, but I'm really sorry I had to give you notice. And she said, no, we understand, it's life and it's all right and we'll be all right. But when I checked with her, they're only there for another week. And I said, have you found anything else yet? And she said, no. So I wouldn't be surprised if they'll be with parents for a period of time as well.
There's a really great program. I was just thinking about this as you were talking then. I think it's called Housing Futures. Arana House is one of the refuges, and I used to be on the board, just to be clear.
Yes.
Not anymore.
Yes.
But they run this incredible program that supports people who are landlords.
Okay.
And they are landlords that want to support women who have come out of FTV.
Oh.
So if you are a landlord with a second or third house and you want to be able to you know, go into a program where it can be allocated to a woman or a woman and her children, then there's a sort of pathway to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So when you said earlier about different things that people can do, I think, you know, if you are in that position and you're the person that says, well, I've got a house, I don't need to be earning a ridiculous amount of money from it. I still want to see a rent coming in and I want to be able to support someone that really needs it. Then that's one way they can look at it.
Wonderful. And you get straight into heaven with that plan.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I always bring in the old Catholicism at useful times, and we could go straight in with that one. But it makes me also think you as shelter and the government must always be thinking of what's the creative way we can house people. So how do we use people's money? How do we try and bring out the good in people? But if we can't bring out the good, like you said, what's a rental cap? Or can they support the landlord doing one thing and the government adds to that? Or how do we be clever so everyone goes, yeah, that's reasonable, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you know, we know that it takes a long time to build houses, but not everything has to be a brick and tile home, right?
Yes.
And there's other models that we're starting to see. There's a really great initiative in Fremantle called My Home, which has been fantastic. That was built a couple of years ago, which is a number of sort of tiny homes in an area. Great architecture around that. Amazing architect called Michelle Blakely has led that project. And it's purely for women over 55 that were experiencing homelessness.
Oh, how cool.
So fantastic, really great energy efficiencies there. So, you know, that sort of prefab homes and modular homes are another option. They're not perfect for everywhere, but they're suitable for some areas.
Yes. And fast, right?
And faster to go up.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really push for more of that as part of the portfolio of housing. As I said, you know, we want to see, we really need 5,000 social houses a year for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
They might not be able to get built immediately, but there might be some ways of acquiring homes and converting homes. So, you know, we also need to see all of the bills that are happening in WA have a regulated percentage that needs to be social housing and needs to be affordable housing.
Right.
Otherwise, we're never going to close that gap.
Yeah, right.
You know, so we push for some of those percentages, so bold targets, so that we can really try and break the back of this housing and homelessness crisis that we're seeing.
Yes. Do you think we're going to get there?
We have to get there.
Okay.
Right, we have to get there, but because we can't keep going down the road that we're going down now. It's awful for people. So it's a human issue. But, you know, even if you wanted to look at it as a economic issue, homelessness is expensive. So, you know, all of the support that people need once they've been living homeless for a while, all of that health, all of that support mechanisms that is needed. So, you know, invest early on. You know, like I said earlier about the youth foyers. So, you know, support people when they're young. Make sure that people can get into and stay in affordable homes,
Yes.
so that you're not paying even more money down the line when people are not living good lives and have got complex needs.
Yes.
So it's about that investment up front to get that return on investment.
It's
later
awesome
on.
when the thing you can do is clever financially, because people like that. So when you go, it'll be cheaper if you do it this way, they go, cheaper. Yes. We get to keep more of our money.
Yeah.
We really like that. No, we're just doing it out of the goodness of our heart. It turns out it's cheaper. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's got to fit. You know, it's got to fit.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to live in the state that is doing the worst out of homelessness. We don't want to be the winner in that.
No, we don't want to be the winner in that.
We want to be the winner in the good stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, we've got a government currently that has done some good stuff, and we want to see more of it.
Okay.
So, you know, whoever is the incoming state government, there's some, you know, we've got some good suggestions and good ideas there.
Right.
We just need to see them materialise now.
Right. Okay, good. Oh, yeah, come on, man. That's just no joke, is it? It's the most basic thing in life.
What's a basic human right?
Basic human right, right? The most basic human right. We live in a society with so much money, and we have people not getting their most basic. Yeah. We should be ashamed of ourselves, really, that we can ignore it. Yeah. It's not all right.
No, it's not all right. I know.
But
there you go.
We got you. No pressure.
There's a whole sector that's working really hard, and you know, and I know that lots of governments working really hard as well. It is a complex issue, but you know, I think we can make some significant changes.
Yeah, and I think at least here we can argue that there is a level of care for people. There's a level of focus from government. It's not just purely harsh commercialism, what do they call it? Meritocracy, where all that BS about, you know, well, I brought myself up. No, like what's actually happening and having some actual care for people, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. And I think, you know, most people want to live in a society where, you know, we care about each other.
I know. Well, would you, you know, if you look at it, basically, would we like to be proud as Australians, but you know, there's a number of areas that we're not really great in, you know. And actually it's interesting that you came from Wales, because some of the people I've known who've made the best social difference in Australia have been not from Australia. And I think part of the reason is not growing up in a culture where you do develop certain cynical blinkers. I think they're able to see more clearly being from somewhere else.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can think of a couple of people where they've made a phenomenal difference, and they're not from Australia. Yeah, right?
Yeah, and I think as well, you know, I love my, you know, original homeland of Wales, but it is pretty grey and rainy a lot of the time. And I think if you're the kind of person, and I know you are, that comes with, you know, a intrinsic gratitude, then when you move to somewhere like Australia, which, you know, does feel like it's got, you know, this beautiful coastline and these beautiful blue skies. And I certainly, for me, I feel very grateful to be able to be here. And I have a lot of friends that are not from here originally that are also appreciative.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe there's a bit of that sort of wanting to give a bit back as well.
Yeah, that could make sense, because, you know, when you're born and bred here as a white person, at least, you can certainly take things for granted. And then if people haven't travelled a lot, because Perth particularly is so isolated, you can get some small thinking because people haven't experienced anything but, or they've experienced Perth and Bali, but not really ventured out in the Bali elements. So, yeah, I think coming in, I get what you're saying. My very first guest, the person that recommended I have this podcast, was Ash McGrath from Northern Ireland.
Okay.
And she talked about waking up here. She lives near the coast, waking up every morning, and she's funny, like ha-ha funny, and she's strong. And she said, you know, I feel like saying to Perth people, wake up, you know, like, don't you realise where you are?
Yeah.
I remember having been in Glasgow for 1 year leading into my second winter when I'm not doing another winter, man. This is too serious.
Yeah,
where is that sun? I go in the office in the dark, I come out in the dark. And then I came home here and went, what is this?
Yeah.
The size of the sky alone It's like twice as high up somehow.
Yeah.
It's like a toy town. It's so clean.
I know.
I went to Cottesloe and went, this is like where Barbie lives.
Yes.
No wonder everyone wants to move here.
Oh, do you know, one of the funniest things, one of my friends visited me from Wales, and I took him up to Kings Park, and he just said, where's all the chewing gum stuck on the floor? And that tickled me, because there's a lot of that in Wales, like old chewing gum that's been there for years, you know, blotting on the paving stones. And I just went, oh my God, I'd forgotten about that, because you just don't see it.
No, because we had a very strong social campaign, Kath. Do it for WA.
Right.
Let's do it. Let's do
so
it
this
for
is a litter thing.
WA.
Yeah.
Let's come on, Danielle. Let's keep West Australia beautiful, and don't just throw it away. Do you know it? When you're outside doing things you love to do, just put it in the bin. You know it's up to you. So let's do it. Let's do it for WA.
Well,
my whole childhood, Kath, was that song.
That was good, wasn't
we
it?
all learnt.
Good.
Yeah, we do it for WA.
Honestly, every single person that comes to visit me comments on, there's no litter.
Where's the litter?
Where's the litter? It is pretty impressive.
Yeah, we don't muck around with litter.
No.
But one could argue our values are a bit confused at times. So let's not litter. Let's also give people houses.
Hey, now there's a smart idea.
Let's do it. This is the new verse. I need a new verse. Let's make sure everyone has got a house.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
And let's not throw them away.
Yes, thank you.
Got it.
Love it. On. Well, that's going to be the new soundtrack for this podcast. There you go. That's
might need a bit of auto-tune.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're right. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful city. But we just need to be making sure we're looking after everyone in it.
That's exactly right. We look after everyone in it. And not get on the bus coming out of the football and whinge about that the bus was 5 minutes late. Honestly, Kath, I could just yell at people in Perth. I've been waiting 5 minutes for this bus. My father did it. We were at a match and we got out waiting for the bus. He goes, where's the bus? I said, Dad, do not become one of those Eagles supporters wearing a massively expensive jacket, having had your shardies in at the match, got your membership for $1,000 a year. The free bus is 5 minutes late and you think I need to hear about that. Wow. Welcome to Perth, Kath. Yeah. Now we're down a whole different tangent, but this is why we've got some of the problems we've got. It's like, let's get out, people. Let's go and visit the world. Yeah. Let's understand what life is about and then come home and go, thank you, Jesus, and everything else. I don't know how I got to be so lucky, and I'm going to be a little bit more thoughtful.
Yeah, it is one of those places where you feel you have to pinch yourself on a regular basis. Oh,
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
I've been lucky to have lots of friends visit me. And friends of mine were over a year ago, and I was looking at the photos, and I texted them this morning. I'm like, oh, it's been a year. And they were like, oh my God, it was amazing. We just want to come back.
I don't know how they go home.
No, I know. And it's really, I don't know if you find this, but I see Perth through their eyes when they arrive, you know, because sometimes you can get into your own world and you get a bit blinkered, and, you know, work is stressful, and, you know, you sort of get into that routine sometimes, and then you have a visitor and you sort of stop and go, right, we go to Rottnest, right, we're going down to Fremantle, you know, we go to all of these different things, and you kind of go, oh yeah, it's
and they're like this,
brilliant.
Like me playing Minecraft, always looking up in the sky with my son going, put your head down, Mum. I don't know how to. So they're doing what I did, looking at the sky, looking at the beach, going, you live here, live here. And then they have to go home. And Wales is beautiful, the UK is beautiful. But I always think, how do you go into the sun? You know, everyone goes to sunny Spain, as Andy would say. Yeah. They go to sunny Spain for a week, get bright pink, because that's the rule over there, different rule here. Yeah. Come home, and then they're in the grey. I know. How they're meant to live their lives. Do you know what? I just thought of something that will make us all feel better as the arseholes that don't care enough. I read a study recently. Yeah. You know, first world problems, that saying first world problems, and whenever we have them as caring kind of people, we feel really guilty, like, oh my God, why was I worried about that, you know? But I was listening to this study, and it's absolutely human nature to do that. So, you know how you said, oh, you know, sometimes I think, oh, hang on, I've got to remember where I am when you're worried about work and busy and stress. It's actually a human thing to pay attention to the problems, because that primal part of our brain that's always on the lookout for the saber-toothed tiger and how does we survive and how do we have our babies and all that stuff that we're just driven to do genetically. we are very good at not being grateful, not noticing what's working, focusing in on problems, becoming complainers about the bus being 5 minutes late. So I like that in terms of okay, it's all right. There's a reason why we like it, but also let's try and rise above that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a reason we act like well-dressed monkeys, because we are monkeys, we are apes, and we act like that a lot tribally, hatefully. You know, I want my banana, I want the biggest banana. And then we're all trying to go, what's the level above that monkey state? It's okay, we're monkeys. Like my brother always says that, humans just monkeys. He's even harsher than me. He's like, humans just monkeys, man. They're just out for themselves. I'm like, I know, but we're trying to elevate above that. So this conversation is, it's all right that I'm an ignorant person that owns a house and am not as grateful as I should be, even though I do have that one on my side because I'm very grateful. But then what else can I do to elevate above that and make a difference and be more thoughtful and be more loving and be more appreciative and be bigger and, you know, because what else are we going to do in the world now? In this crazy world, the only single thing I can think to do is try and be as loving, as open-minded, as generous, as thoughtful. It's all I can do because I have no power over anything really. So what can I do? That's all I can do that I can think of is to try and be the least monkey part of me and the most elevated human part.
Yeah, and that is what separates us, isn't it? I think it's that sort of need to have, you know, that sort of growth mindset, isn't it? Is to be, you know, better than you were last week, last year, 10 years ago, whatever it is, in whatever that looks like for you.
That's right.
You know, and whether that is sort of being calmer or being more generous or being more healthy or whatever it is, you know, hopefully as we go through life you're building, aren't you, rather than staying stagnant.
Well, you know what a lot of people say, which I really don't believe in, they'll say, you know, you get smaller as you get older. Like you become more set in your ways, more opinionated, more cynical. And I'm disappointed to say I do see that a bit in people. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I'm so lucky. I have the opposite commitment. I'm like, I'm going to get bigger, more loving, more generous. I realise how many mistakes I've made. My genius mindfulness teacher, Tim Goddard, on a masterclass I was on the other day, she said, oh my God, isn't it so humiliating when you learn the next level and realise what you've been doing? But I was like, humiliating's the right word. I'm often humiliated. So I get why people don't dig that feeling. It's weird, it's uncomfortable, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, but you grow out of that discomfort.
Grow out of that.
Yeah.
And you go, now look where I am, or how I'm able to see things, or how blessed my life is. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I even, you know, sometimes people might remind me of something I said 10 years ago and I go, yeah, well, I wouldn't say that now.
Yeah.
You know, because I think, well, that's good because I've learned something in the last 10 years and that might have been my opinion then, but it's not my opinion now. And that's not a bad thing. That isn't like, you know, people go like, well, you've changed your tune. Yeah, I'm supposed to.
Yeah, I've changed my tune.
I'm supposed to change
That's that meme I've seen. You've changed. And it says, yeah, I hope so. You changed. Like, yes, I have changed. Yeah. That's why it's so painful for people when they hang out with people who knew them a long time ago. Like, family is often a trigger because you get stuck in concrete. And it's like, I'm nothing like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I love that idea. And societally, if we take this whole concept societally, we need society to be opening and growing. And you can see both happening at once. You can see the shutdown, the tribalism, the thoughtlessness, the selfishness, the wildness that's happening in the world. Of course, USA I'm referring to. And then you see other programs that you'd be seeing created, people working, the thoughtfulness, the love, the generosity, the creativity. I feel like there's like light and dark happening. Both are more intensely happening.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, you know, when we go back to working in this sector, and it is hard, and it's hard for people who are working on the front line, but you're also working with people who are really passionate and really clever and really innovative.
Yeah.
And, you know, the networks that you're lucky enough to be part of, like you've got to be grateful of that as well, you know, and try and leverage that. I think that's really important. But, you know, to go back to what you said then about you know, how you're trying to sort of learn and grow and get bigger. I find that just trying to do something out of the ordinary regularly, and sometimes you kind of forget, right, because you're going to go like Monday to Friday and then you got to do the things you've got to do on your weekends, whatever. But I find that, you know, sometimes if I just go to a different part of the city or I go to a restaurant I haven't been to before.
Yeah.
Or like I'm going straight down to Fremantle tonight, and I don't go out in Fremantle very often just because it's not that convenient.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, I'm going out in Fremantle tonight, and I know I'll have an absolute ball, and I'll suddenly be, oh, why aren't I coming out in Fremantle more often? So I just think even if it's little things, and putting yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone, I think that's really important, because we can all get to a point where we kind of go, well, I don't want to do that anymore. And I do think there's a balance as you get older, because you do kind of say, well, I'm just not doing that anymore because I don't want to. And that's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's
that's
okay.
Good,
that's
right?
Good.
That you're not putting yourself in positions where you think, I'm not saying yes to things anymore that I don't want to do.
That's right.
But on the other hand, you've also got to go, but maybe I'll do something new that I do want to do.
Yeah.
And it might be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But, I want to sort of make that. And, to be honest, like this role for me, I've been in this role for about 2.5 years now. And it has really challenged my comfort zone. Oh. I've done a load of media. I've been in front of lots of cameras, and I've been in an environment that is really alien to me in some respects. But God, you grow from it.
Oh yeah.
And you learn, and and suddenly you kind of go, oh, I think I've got to a point where I'm comfortable talking about whatever. And in my case, it's what we've been talking about, but. If you don't put yourself in that environment, you're never going to get there.
No. I was talking before we started about this model that you'll see often in training, the circles of comfort, learning and terror. And, comfortable is we're comfortable, and learning we're slightly uncomfortable, and terror is like it sounds. And a lot of times in my life I've pushed myself out into the terror circle. I think intuitively knowing if I wanted to enjoy myself the way I wanted to, and I wanted to have the size of life I wanted to, I had to really change some very fear-based stuff that I've been taught, right?
Yeah.
So I put myself in these very difficult situations. But what I say to people about it is, you don't have to go to terror, but if you push out, like you said, little bit, that circle of comfort getting bigger, people don't realise the trap. If you don't stretch out, you're more fearful of everything.
Yeah.
And even while you're in your comfort circle, everything is so scary. Whereas now, for sure, there'd be things that'd scare me, but a hell of a lot less than would have scared me 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I've tested and pushed and tried and suffered and right.
Yeah.
It's like now we can do heaps of stuff.
Yeah. So it's interesting when people sort of say you're less comfortable as you get older. And I think that's perhaps because you've allowed that to happen. But sometimes, you might have allowed that to happen.
What would happen is, if I was going to imagine that I was getting smaller, not bigger, if I think of certain things in my life, if I hadn't been able to sort of grow or heal or learn from them and had felt very upset or disappointed, I think for when people get smaller, if I think of people I know that have got smaller, not bigger, they've been very disappointed and not been able to recover from that, not been able to own their part in it, become victims of it, and then because they don't want that same thing to happen again, they just get tighter and tighter and tighter. And I do experiments with people all the time, because a lot of people will come at other people quite tight and quite defensive, even in customer service situations or whatever. And I needed to get a tyre fixed on the car, and there was a young fellow actually at the shop, and he answered that phone, hello, and I said, oh, hello, I need to book in. And he goes, oh, yeah, what one are you looking for? And I said, oh, I can't really remember. This is the one we got, right? I'm buggerising around trying to figure out how to. He goes, okay, 1 o'clock. I said, all right. Anyway, I totally forgot, and Andy drove off in that car to work.
Right.
So I had to ring this same fellow back.
Yeah.
We'll call him Bob. Morning, Bob speaking. Oh, hello, Bob. It's me. I booked in my car. He goes, hang on, let me have a look. Oh, yeah. I said, I'm so sorry. I let my husband drive off with that car. And he goes, oh, no. And I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, we had you booked in for 1 o'clock. I've ordered the tyre. I said, I know, I've stuffed up. And he goes, oh, no, this is no good. And I said, oh, listen, can I book it in for tomorrow? And he goes, yeah. You want 1 o'clock? And I go, yeah. And anyway, we're having this sort of quite muted conversation where I'd clearly let him down and he wasn't happy. Anyway, and I said, oh, I'm really sorry, Bob. I really stuffed up, and I know I've stuffed up your day. And he goes, that's okay. And I said, we'll see you tomorrow. And he goes, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And I do this experiment all the time, because people love one another, but they're just scared of one another, and they've been hurt before. And And it's so I went to meet a friend at a cafe the other day, and when I get in the right frame of mind, I must be beaming love because weird shit happens, right?
Yeah.
I'm not always like that at all, and I've got terrible bitchy resting face. Like I show it in training. Look at this, Kath. If I'm not smiling.
But I don't see that very often.
I'm not even frowning. That's my natural face. Look at Grayson. See, that's his natural face.
He's good.
He's got the most beautiful smile. But anyway, I'm not always like it, right? But when I am like it, all this weird stuff now happens. It's so wonderful. So I'm meeting this friend. Hi, Kat. Very excited to meet my friend. I hadn't seen her for ages. She comes into this cafe and we go, hey, like that, give each other a hug, right? And I'm still smiling, let her go. And there's this big burly fellow right behind her at the doorway. And he goes, and I go, all right, bring it in, buddy. Give him a hug. And then the little nervous waiter goes, it's only for two, right? Because that's an extra person. I said, oh, no, I don't know him. And it's so joyful. Like when that's happened a few times, more in recent times as I've been able to access more love, less ego, just being able to realise how wonderful my life is, how lucky I am, and less of that noise has been in play. And then all this magical stuff happens.
Yeah, it does.
Because I always say heaven is where people are connected and hell is where they're not. If you connect with people and if we were connected as a society and understood where actually most people, vast majority of people are good people, they just might not know how to express that. Wouldn't we have such a good time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think I think what I've realised as well as I've got a little bit older is, I'm mostly, like, my baseline's pretty happy.
Yeah, awesome.
Which I feel really lucky about. And I don't know whether that's choice or whether that's nature or it's intrinsic. I'm not sure. I think it might be a bit of all of that.
Yes.
But I also realise it's privilege, right? So there's some privilege in the opportunities that I've had and the family that I've grown up in. Yeah. And I also realise that, sometimes when you come across someone that's you're not feeling that joy from. Yeah. And I think the last few years of my career have taught me this. Like, people have often been through some real trauma. So their ability to bring that joy and smile and laughter and love is not always really forthcoming. And, that's been a real learn for me because I think, perhaps when I was a bit younger, I'd be like, oh, bloody miserable bugger. Right? That would be my automatic. And now, as I'm getting older, I'm thinking, I have no idea what they're going through. No idea what their life's like or what sort of day they're having or anything else.
And the freedom of that, like Andy will say with Sam, because we have always tried with Sam to be polite and thoughtful with people without sacrificing himself. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah.
But Andy will say to Sam, listen, mate, I want you to be good with people because you're just going to have a better time if you are.
Yeah.
Because when people are sad or afraid or traumatised and they're coming up against everyone as the enemy, of course everyone occurs as the enemy.
Yeah.
Not many people can do what you or I'll do without luckiness, because I agree it's very lucky to have a particular nature. And it's I even think whatever good decisions I've made, they're still lucky that I was able to make them, right? Just very blessed.
Yeah.
So then I think, well, what's the least I can do? I'm having the time of my life. If someone's rude to me, who's had a terrible time, because something's wrong if they're being rude, only hurt people hurt people, Kath. Love that saying, daggy but true.
It's so true.
So they come at me like a million, and I go, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I always tell this story of training up on the mine years ago, and this guy came in, sat down, big bloke. We were quite new up there at the time, and he sat down. I said, good morning. And he goes, morning. And I said, how are you? And he goes, just so you know, I don't fucking want to be here. Right? And speaking of the monkey and the higher self, both came out. So one came out luckily, which was me going, well, you can get the fuck out internally. Because, I'm only human and I'm a redhead, so I've only got so much I can work with.
Yeah.
And then I said out loud to him, I thought, oh, fancy saying that. And I said to him, oh, wow, like, gee whiz, you must really not want to be here, right, that you just said that. And he goes, no, I don't. And I said, what's the worry? Boring? He goes, you might make us role play. And I said, everyone's always worried about role play. I said, we're not going to role play. He goes, all right. And he goes, you're going to get me up the front? Do I have to write? I'm not very good at writing. He had all these worries. And I said, listen, mate, none of that's going to happen. Yeah. You just relax. This is what we're going to do. If I ask you to do anything and you don't want to, just go like that and we won't do it. And he goes, all right, And I go, you feeling a bit better? He goes, a bit better. And he goes, he goes, all right.
Oh,
And I go, so, yeah, I go, come on. You're going to be all right? Because, they can't be naughty. They're not allowed to express their fear through, but, I go, you're going to be all right to be here? And he goes, yep, I'll be all right. And I said, okay, good.
Yeah.
Right? So the monkey wanted to tell him to F off. A lot of people will act from their monkey. They can't help that. But if we've got a choice not to, let's do that.
Yeah.
Because
that's a real skill, isn't it? And don't you just love it when you walk into a room or an environment or a meeting when someone's clearly got a wall up, and by the end of it, the wall's down, it's crumbled, they're laughing and joking and asking you to go for a glass of wine and let's catch up. And
so satisfying.
Love that.
So satisfying.
Love that.
Because it's the perfect combo of heart and ego. Your heart goes, I've made you feel better, and your ego goes, I'm freaking awesome, man. Look what I just did. Perfect combo. Everyone wins.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I do feel lucky both in my career but also in the celebrant work that I get to do, is that that engagement with people in all sorts of environments, obviously the work that I've talked about, but also the joy of getting married and the heartbreak that people go through when they're in grief. So being able to be in a position where you can sit, relatively comfortably in any of those discussions, I feel like is something that you said at the start, I feel privileged. Well, I feel privileged in all of those situations. And it's a real it's a gift, I suppose, isn't it? And it's a gift that, you're constantly learning.
Yes.
And, I always want to make sure that I'm getting better at that. But yeah, it's people, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's engagement with people.
It is, yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think understanding that people are good and one of my clients that I work with, when I deal with the individuals with that client, I know very particular, wonderful, beautiful people. And then when I see them in a group together, you never know the people that I've spoken to one-on-one because their walls are up and their defensiveness.
Yeah, okay.
They're like different creatures.
Yeah.
And when they're not getting along with one another, I go, I wish you knew. And I'll literally say to them, you don't understand this other person. You're only seeing one side of them, and they're a wonderful person and you're a wonderful person, and you're not showing each other that, right?
Yeah.
So we've got this great privilege to be with people in a loving way. I wonder what's going to be next for you in where your career's going to go,
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. I'm not sure. I don't have the answers yet, but I'm sort of interested and excited as well around what that looks like. And there's times where I kind of feel like I'm going in a certain direction, and then other times where it depends how tired I am.
I was going to say.
It depends on how stressful a week I've had. Yeah. So I don't know what that looks like yet, but I am sort of excited to think about what might be next. I'm really excited about this year at Shelter. Like I said, we've got lots of changes and lots of things happening in terms of different elections, state, feds, local government. I feel like, we just had a bit of a win as one of the commitments from government, which will support Shelter in one of our initiatives. I'm excited to get that up and running. I'm also really excited to officiate Alvin and Mark's wedding. And there's a few other bits and pieces. I've got some travel plans.
Photos alone, I must access. Alvin, I need the photos. They'll be.
I might have to sneak a couple to you on the day.
Do yes. Oh, I would love that. They are going to look so beautiful.
I know.
Oh my God.
So yeah, there's lots
so
of exciting
handsome,
things.
And then
I know. And
with their style, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. So there's lots of good stuff on, and I'm going back to the UK in June. I've got a great niece that will be 1 in June. So she's a little redhead like you. There's lots of redhead in our family. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I get to do that, and just planning some trips. So I think it's really important when you are in an environment that's quite stressful, and in an environment that's quite emotional, that you balance that out with some, for me anyway, with some travel and friendships and fun. And you've got to do that as well, right? Because I don't think I'd be able to do the job otherwise.
No, or you would do it in a way where with people that are in caring professions, you'll see if there's not the balance there or they don't understand their drivers, the wrong kind of love can come out, which is not as much love as martyrdom or you know, you see it in people that are very caring and do make a difference, but it can almost mutate at times where it'll become a bitterness or a martyrdom or a flavour that if you're going to do your best work, you can't be...
no, you can't be angry,
actually. No, I understand that because there are things I'm angry about and therefore I can't make any good difference because I just want to yell at everyone. It doesn't work, Kath. You already know this. This is why you are making a difference, because you don't go into meetings and just start pointing and yelling at people. I don't either because I realise it's unsuccessful, but I'd like
really
to.
Hard not to.
Oh my God, I can't imagine. This redhead thing, man, like Grace and I have never spoken about it, but when I was in Scotland, I met a fellow on the street. I didn't realise how many Scottish people were redheads.
Yeah.
There's zillions of them.
I was thinking that when you said you lived in Glasgow, I was thinking you'd fit right in.
Yeah, they were like, they'd say, where are you from? And I'd say Perth, and I realised after saying that a few times, they go, you're not from Perth. I go, Perth, Western Australia. Then I had one guy go, where are you from? And I said, Perth, Western Australia. And he goes, what did he say? He goes, oh, no, you poor thing, you're a redhead. And I said, yeah. And he goes, what religion are you? And I said, oh, well, I was brought up Catholic on my dad's side and mum's not really anything Protestant kind of thing. He goes, oh, God, you've got both going on. And then he said, what did he say? He said, tell me your star sign. God, it was an interesting conversation with the street. I said, Scorpio. And he goes, oh, no one's going to be able to live with you with that combo going on. And you'll feel heard when he hears that part. It's a bit of a combo, right? But yeah, there's redheads running around everywhere.
Yeah. My mum's a redhead and my eldest niece, is got the beautiful curls and the red hair, and she's just had little Robin. So we've got Robin, who's a redhead as well.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, gorgeous. So
how beautiful. Oh, that's awesome. And only in June and it'll fly.
Yeah, so that's
Are you going from the wedding straight over or back here and then?
No, I'm going to... What I'm doing actually is I'm going to Thailand, where I've got a really good friend, my friend Claire, who we've been friends since we were in school. She lives in Thailand.
Yes.
So I'm going to have a few days with Claire and then I'm going to head over to the UK, be there for Robin's first birthday, and then I'm going to Portugal for a week.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, which bit?
The Algarve.
Is that Lagos?
Do you know what? I've never been to Portugal. My geography is absolutely awful about Portugal. My cousin's got a house there. He's very kindly offered it to me and my friend Mara from Cardiff, and we're going to go there. And I'm like, Anthony, where is it? And he's given me the name, and I had to look it up because I was like, I don't know where
think that...
It's on the south coast.
Yes. So I was in Portugal 100 years ago when I was backpacking before Glasgow. I was in a place that I wanted to call Lagos, Lagos. I think it's called in Portuguese Lagos.
Okay.
And it's the coastal, everyone goes there on holidays town.
Yeah.
And I remember the lady in the chip shop was very pleased with me because I got my little book out and tried to speak terrible Portuguese. And she said, I really appreciate you trying. And I said, well, I'm trying to be respectful. And she said, everyone here just speaks English because it's a coastal, but it's stunning. Yeah, you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, just, you know, they've got a house with a pool. It's close to the beach. I'm like, that'll be fine. My cousin said, there's a golf course there if you want to borrow my clubs, of which I laughed loudly. Won't be doing that, Aunt. Thanks. No.
I went to Super Golf once out in the Swan Valley and I realised the gap between me and golf is insurmountably large.
Well, let me tell you my golf story.
Okay.
I lived on the Whitsunday Islands for about 9 months when I was 26, 27 and played golf, drink a hole golf. So you have a drink at every hole. I think I only played 9 holes.
I was going to say. Still.
So quite boozy, and then kept on drinking, obviously, at the end of the day. It was all the staff because we all worked on the island.
Yeah.
And I had the big Spice Girl trainers on. You remember the ones?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So, you know, I was 26 and, you know, nothing could touch me. I was just invincible.
Yes.
And I did a little hop, skip and a jump out of my room to do, I can't remember what I was doing, I grabbed something out of my room and snapped my leg. Snapped my tib and fib. Yep. Leg went over. Yeah, I know. I literally heard it before I felt it. I know. Vile.
I'm trying to think, what's the emergency services like on the Whitsundays?
Not great. So I was on the floor. I can remember I had brand new jeans on, and I remember running my hand down my leg, and I had this like second knee almost, like in my shin there.
Was the alcohol helping with the incredible pain?
The alcohol wore off pretty quick. And a friend of mine walked around the corner. It was all like in darkness. It was around by where the staff used to stay. And I said, I broke my leg. And he was like, no. And he went to get me up. And I was like, don't touch me. Oh. Don't touch me.
I really mean it.
Yeah, I've broken my leg. And anyway, he went to get help. And by then, the pain had started to... Yeah, it's a very painful thing.
I can imagine it would be.
It's
as
very
you had a second knee.
Painful. Anyway, it took hours. They had to like call a water taxi to come and get me. One nurse on the island. We'd all been drinking. Sunday night used to be staff drinking night. Yeah. Right? Everybody was off, so we've all had a few drinks.
Yeah.
And
including the nurse.
Including the nurse.
She's like,
she's giving me something or other.
Can you read that?
Some needle in me.
Can have one of those.
Yes.
Let's have two.
Oh my God, the water taxi came. Everyone's carrying me on this stretcher. I'm screaming in agony. They hit my leg on the way into the boat.
Of course they did. They were wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. The tide's
out. This is Australia.
Honestly, you can't make it up. Anyway, get to the mainland, which was Proserpine, I think. Oh, was that Early Beach? Anyway, one of the two, can't remember.
Yeah.
By now, it's like 2 a.m., right? So there's one doctor. Yeah. Early Beach was a lot smaller then.
Yeah.
He's got up from bed. What's going on? Yeah. You know, he's come down. He's taken one look at my legs, black and blue. There's bones sticking out.
Yeah.
And he's gone, I'm not touching this.
No.
Stick it in an ambulance. 2 hours up to, where was it? Up the coast.
Was it Cairns? Was it Innisfail?
No. It'll come to me in a minute. I can't think where it is, but it'll come to me.
I keep wanting to yell Queensland names at you.
Yeah, that's fine. Mackay, thank you. Yeah. So I'm in this big blow-up thing. By now I've had, what's the strong stuff? Morphine.
Morphine,
Thanks very much. I'll have that anytime.
I was going to say.
I'm feeling no pain at this point.
Anytime they tell me I'm going to have light sedation, I'm happy weeks ahead of the events.
So I get to the hospital. It's like 6 a.m. by now or something. So, and it's a busy hospital. And I go, and they lift me off the stretcher or whatever I'm on into a bed or vice versa, I can't remember. And as they've done that, I've gone, my other leg's a bit sore as well. They said, we'll have a look at that while you're under. So I wake up, I've got my right leg, thigh to toe in plaster, and my right leg, knee to toe.
No.
Because apparently what I've done when I've fallen over in said Spice Girl trainers is I've torn all the ligaments in my left leg and I've snapped my tib and fib in my right leg.
Come on.
Can't make it up. So he said, look, because you hadn't signed for us to operate on the left leg, because of course it was like a last minute thing before I was going into surgery. He said, we're going to have to do your left leg again. And I said, what's that going to... He said, you're going to be in both legs in plaster.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's not going to happen.
Oh.
I said, I'm having a lovely time on the Whitsunday Islands.
Yeah.
I can deal with one leg being in plaster. 2 legs means I've got to get on a plane back to the UK.
Got it.
Right. So he said, well, I can't make you. He said, okay, I'll do you a deal. I'll take your left leg out of plaster so that you can walk on it. It's going to be weak.
Yeah.
You have to promise me that you'll get the ligaments done when you get back to the UK, whenever that is.
Did you do it?
I think you know the answer to that.
I do know the answer. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed, Kath, because I think you did promise that fellow, didn't you?
I did promise him. And it's funny because I feel like my life is, 2 degrees of separation, right? So I came out of hospital. This leg now free.
Yes.
Weak but free.
This
leg full plaster. I was living on South Mole and, I'd been in hospital in Mackay, and then a couple of weeks later, a whole gang of us went over to one of the other islands for the weekend. And it was in, I think it was Daydream, one of those. And I was in a lot of pain. And I got on the boat from Daydream, Hamilton, to go back to the mainland, to go back to South Mole. And my surgeon was on the boat.
Did he give you a particular look?
Yeah, and I went over to him and
giving
said,
you now?
I'm in agony. And he went, right, okay. And he said, I know what's happened. Like, the plaster was too tight on the back of my knee.
Oh.
And he said, I'm going to draw around the plaster. This is on the boat. This is on the ferry. And he drew around it and he said, go to the mainland. Don't get on the boat to go back. He said, go straight and see this person in Airlie Beach and tell him to cut
where I've drawn.
And that's what he did. So the top half of the plaster came off, which gave my legs some breathing space. And then I had knee down for 6 months.
On crutches?
On crutches.
For 6 months
with
your ligament leg running the show.
That's exactly right.
That's why you never need it operated on again. It's re-strengthened.
Strong as an ox.
It's like, well, I've done everything I can possibly do.
On it since then.
Of course you have. It's like, we're not getting operated on. I'm the leg now.
Yeah.
It probably felt special because normally our right legs are a bit more dominant and then your left is like, I'm in charge now.
Do you know what? It's right. Most people break their right leg because most people are right-handed.
Yeah.
And I know I used to sit there because I used to go every month to go and get my plaster changed because, of course, your legs didn't just shrinking away.
Yeah.
So you have to go and get it changed. And I used to sit in the waiting room and have a look. And I used to say to the surgeon or the guy that was changing the plaster, like, most people it's their right leg. And he said, yeah, because it's your dominant leg.
Yeah.
It's the leg you put down first.
That's right. Do you know what happened when you said, I said, did you have that operation done? And you said, no. 2 things happened to me. One, I really am very strong about my word, right? So if I say I promise, then I'll do it. So I'm very judgy when people don't. But the second thing is you reminded me of my husband. And a thing I have not got over, Kath, and he went to Greece and he drove a Vespa-like thing off a cliff, and the fellow who was kind of part of the local Greek mafia was very good to him. He had no money and he said, I need you to pay this, you need to pay $1,000 equivalent or whatever. He said, I don't have it. And he said, I'm going to let you go if you promise me you'll send me the money. What do you think happened? My husband promised on his life. Did he ever send that money? Andy, you know what you did and you know I never forgive you.
I would have done that. And I do understand because I am very particular about my word as well.
Okay, that's fine. That softens me a little.
Yeah. I think
this was a blip.
It was a blip. Okay. I think what happened was I think I did go when I was in the UK and I think they were a bit like, well, whatever you did.
Whatever you did, this leg's as strong as this is the strongest leg we've ever seen.
We're not going to open it up now.
That's $1 million.
And I did, so I think I kind of went like, I think I tore some ligaments in here if you want to. And
something happened. You're like, nah, you look right to us. Okay, good. That gives me the excuse to forgive you totally.
Yeah, there you go.
And I understand, and it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Andy's not forgiven.
No,
that's not
Andy
your
did
problem.
the wrong thing.
He absolutely did. The guy let him off and then he did the wrongy. That is not how we live our lives, is it?
No. But I bet has he been sorry about that since? And
no way. Not as sorry as he should be. Right. I mean, he definitely feels guilty if it ever comes up with me because I do what I'm doing now and yell at him.
And tell people
But I don't think he's really felt really guilty. Yeah, he deserves to have it told on air. He knows what he did. I just wish I had more listeners so I could tell more people about his wrongdoing.
Oh, let's see what we can do.
How nice. What do you reckon? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah,
I think we've been talking for 2 hours.
We have not.
How long have we been talking for, Danielle?
1 hour, 55 minutes.
We might be a 2-parter. That's appropriate. Alvin was a 2-parter.
I thought maybe 45 minutes.
We haven't even mentioned our mutual colleague / friend Yvonne Atkinson.
I know.
She's a sweetheart, isn't she?
She actually, I mean, I say to her all the time, I couldn't do this job without you, Yvonne.
Yeah, because she's Sunbeam.
Yeah.
An organised Sunbeam.
Yeah.
Like a socially organised Sunbeam. I really get why she's doing good things for you there.
She is amazing. Every Friday we meet. We've started doing this for probably about 2 or 3 months now. We meet on a Friday, we have lunch together and we talk about everything we need to talk about working on the business. And it keeps me going. She keeps me going. She's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
She is a keeping going because she's a beautiful, generous, people-focused. She's real sunshine, Yvonne.
She's genuine and authentic and I can really trust her. And sometimes I just have to say, Yvonne, I just need to pass this by you, and she's like, do you need to do a sense check? Yes, I do.
I do. Thanks, Yvonne.
And we do that for each other. So I'm very lucky to have her working.
Super cool.
Yeah,
and it's very good
brilliant.
that she keeps you going because then you can do your good work.
Yeah, and she sort of really helps look after the internal side of the organisation. So, you know, all of the HR and the administration. Yeah, she's brilliant. Very clever.
Yeah, she's very clever
Yeah.
and very experienced. And she's
Yeah.
got her MBA. We didn't even talk about your postgrad in business psychology. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I've got nothing on my hands, nothing to do. I'll go and do a postgrad in business psychology. And she's like, I've got nothing on my plate either. I'm going to go and do an MBA.
Oh, well, do you know what happened in my last job? I'll just say this very quickly. I was a 4-day-a-week CEO.
Yes.
Which, by the way, yes, please, if
Honestly.
I could ever have that again. And I thought I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something in that time that was invested into my future. So I did 2 things. I did the celebrant qualification.
Yes.
And I did my postgrad cert in psychology, business and management, which has been really helpful because it really helps me understand what makes people tick. I do need to go back and read some of the notes, actually.
There would have been a lot.
Good reminders.
Yeah, there would have been a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll wrap it up. All I need to do before we finish is tell you about the lemon squeezer I bought for Alvin because it's a life changer in case you don't have it. So I was thinking about Alvin, I was thinking about you yesterday and I was thinking our whole friendship was worth it for that lemon squeezer, I reckon. Even though our friendship was very nice without it, I ever think if he had a doubt about the worth of our friendship, that lemon squeezer has changed that. It's from Dream Farm. This is for everyone. I don't get paid, of course. This is from Dream Farm. It's a squeezer where you put the lemon in. It's hard to explain. You go like that with the handles.
Okay.
You don't have to pip it. It catches the pips. It gets every amount of juice. I'll buy you one as a present.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, I'll buy you one as a present.
It's really interesting that you say that. I'd love you to buy me one as a present. Thank you.
I will.
Do you know what came up on my Facebook feed this morning was a limoncello. I can never say that properly.
That's right. No, that's right. Yep.
Class, like a master class in Perth. Because
God.
I think we had some the night we went out.
We certainly did.
Yeah, it's Mark's thing. And I was like, I was like, oh my God, they're doing these in Perth. So I meant to tag Kalina, Mark's sister. So I'll send you.
I was going to say,
how good would
could
that be?
I get involved?
Yes.
Well, we love lemon and we love limoncello.
And if you've got the...
I've got the squeezer.
Right?
I could BYO. They'd be like, you don't need to bring your own stuff, love. I'm like, wait till you see this squeezer.
Oh, well, on that note, thanks very much.
Right, thank you.
Life gives you lemons.
I'm not saying it. Thanks, Kath.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful.
Yeah, it has. Thank you. Cool.